Hello and welcome. My name is Smita Joshi. I am about to share with you a conversation with an extraordinary being. He's a modern-day rishi. He's a yogi, a mystic, a visionary, and he goes by the name of Sadhguru Jaggi Vasudev.
Sadhguru, a grahastha yogi, carries the same intensity, insight, wisdom, and passion as the ancient sages to bring well-being to every individual. A mystic, yogi, visionary humanitarian, and poet, Sadhguru is a spiritual master with a difference. Traversing seamlessly from the ancient to the ultra-modern, he bridges the gap between the known and the unknown, enabling all those who encounter him to explore and experience the deepest dimensions of life. Making a clear break from mere customs and rituals, Sadhguru presents the inner dimension in a scientific manner as it is relevant to our times.
The questions that I'm about to ask him are questions that I believe many of us have, some confusions that linger in our minds. I'm going to put to him and see how he can clear them up for us. Sadhguruji, people like Sri Ramakrishna and many other spiritual masters have talked about life as a householder or as a monk, a renunciate. And I like to think of myself as a householder yogini. I'm passionate about integrating our daily life with the inner self. So living life true to yourself, if you like. And I know that you are a family man. I know that you also head up a very large foundation. So you know something about the challenges of what it takes to integrate living a normal life with being true to yourself. Can you please address those challenges?
Family is a challenge only if they have become difficult. Otherwise, why is it a challenge? It's a support. People create a family as a support system, not as a challenge. So, families can be of many kinds. Just question of husband, wife and children. Right now I have a family of a few million people. So, is it a challenge? It is not a challenge, it's a great support. About dividing this as householder and monk is just a question of choice, of arrangements, of ambience. Because spiritual process is essentially an inward process. What you do within yourself and what you do outside of yourself are two different things. What you do outside is as you like the arrangement. What you do within is the most important thing. So is outside a distraction for what you do within yourself? Could be if you allow it to be. But it is possible that whatever the situation can be a distraction if you are not well established enough. It's not because of the family that you're distracted. Just your mind can keep you distracted without any outside support. People choose either this or that, depending upon their personal choices. It's not a question of which is the right thing to do. It's an individual choice. And every human being should be allowed that choice as to which way he wants to explore that.
At what point in your life did you make the transition or realize that you'd made the transition from being what I call a person of the world, a normal person, into somebody who's enlightened?
This is the biggest issue on the planet right now. We have started considering to be in limited and compulsive ways is normal. And if you go beyond that, You're either you have become holy or weird. My whole endeavor in life is to make this normal, to make the process of enlightenment, to make process of realization, to heighten one's perception to the peak of knowing as a normal process of life, not as a weird achievement. So, you should ask me, when did I become normal? From being abnormally crippled, from knowing.
Yes.
Most of these things have been said by people who have no experience. It is like research. If you copy from one book, it's plagiarism. If you copy from 10, it's research. So there are lots of people, if they read 3 books, they'll write 1 book. So too many things like this have been said by scholarly people. We need to understand this much. We are talking about this one. You cannot learn about this one from a book. And whatever books that are written by anybody, whoever might have written, with all due respect to all of them, they are written by human beings. And human minds are capable of distortion, that's a known fact. But this book is written by the Creator Himself. If you learn to read this, it will be clear as to what it is. So learning to read this book, not reading some other book about yourself, learning to read this book of self, the methodology, the technology of reading it, we called it yoga. But when I say yoga, the moment I use the word yoga, in this part of the world you're thinking about twisting yourself out into impossible postures or whatever, getting fitness or building abs, whatever else. Yoga is not about that, it's about learning to read the inner nature of what this is. What is the point of reading this? Can't we dissect it and know it? It's not about that. You know the world only through yourself. You perceive the world the way it reflects upon your mindscape, you have no other perception. Right now you think you see me here, but actually it is the way I am reflected and projected into your retina that you're seeing me, no other way. So this is how you perceive the whole world. So to understand how it perceives, to know what is the basis of this perception, once you know this, you know everything that's worth knowing in the existence. People go about inventing words, Atman, Paramatman, everything. At some point, somebody might have chosen words to describe or distinguish between one and the other. After that, everybody has a free run. They can go on using these words endlessly. One will only improve their vocabulary, but it will not take you any closer to yourself.
What is your experience of the inner self?
I can never talk about it, I can only talk around it.
I understand.
Talking about inner self is… you cannot talk about it. Talking around it. If in your experience, if you begin to taste, if you begin to know, if you begin to experience a constant reality, which is beyond your physical reality, which is beyond your psychological reality, for now, you can call that as yourself. Don't call it as inner self. If you call it inner self, there must be another outer self. If there's an outer self, there may be another outer self. How many coatings do you have? So, I think many people in London have been kind of… they felt insulted when I gave a quote which is printed all over the place today. I said, if you do not get out of your shell, you're just a nut. Which is being used as a promotional quote right now. People said people in London are being insulted by this. I said, it's okay. Because it's not about insulting them, it's about provoking them to see the limitations in which they're existing right now. Now, if you go on creating inner self, inner self and double inner self, endlessly you're going on creating more and more shells for yourself. Because body is a shell, but mind can create 1,000,000 shells. So all these words will only give you more and more protection. It doesn't make you vulnerable to the existence. Everybody wants to save themselves always because the basic instinct by which they are going is instinct of self-preservation. Because of instinct of self-preservation, always the nature of the mind is to create more and more boundaries around itself. The more walls you build around yourself, the better it is. But you need to understand the walls of self-protection that you build are also the walls of self-imprisonment. A fortress that you build to protect yourself also becomes your prison. So knowing the self, let's not use the word self as if it's something else. It is you. Everybody knows what I am exists. What is the nature of who I am is the only problem. Nobody has a doubt whether they exist or not. Some philosophers have raised such questions, do I really exist? The question is relevant only as an instrument to dig deeper, but it's not relevant as a fact. Yes, obviously you exist. The very fact that you're questioning your existence means you exist. The problem is, people are trying to know this through their intellect. Intellect can only know that which is logical, that which is divisible. That which is not divisible, intellect is incapable of perceiving, because all that you perceive, all the information that goes to the intellect is going through the 5 sense organs. And all the 5 sense organs, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting and touching, they know things only by comparison. Comparison means there must be minimum of 2 entities. Without 2, there is no comparison. So when you're talking about this, which is the source of creation, this is creation, this body is creation, but this is being created from inside. So the source of creation which is within is not 2, it's 1, that cannot be perceived intellectually. So one has to transcend the intellect means one has to transcend the 5 senses. When we say transcend, people think they have to beat it down. It is not about denying the senses, it is about transcending the senses. There is a difference between going to the 1st floor and demolishing the ground floor. Instead of inventing more and more words, all we have to see is that we do exist, that's a fact. It is the problem is that we do not know the nature of our existence. If you want to know the nature of our existence, digging into libraries is of no use. Even if what's written in the book is true, till you experience it, you don't know whether it's the truth. It's just a story. Stories will entertain you, but they'll not liberate you.
Reality is only available through real experience. It cannot, as you say, you can't describe it, you can only talk about it.
Not just inner experience, even outer experience is like that.
Okay.
Can you tell me how a jamun tastes without eating it?
Exactly.
And even if you've eaten it, can you tell me? Can you tell me and make me feel how it tastes? You cannot. So even a simple experience of eating a sweet, you cannot explain and make somebody else experience. So a profound experience of within can never be made that way. So we don't talk about the self, we don't talk about inner nature, we just create tools to take you towards that. These tools and these technologies to turn you inward is largely referred to as yoga. But I hesitate to use that word in this part of the world because
It's misunderstood. It's misunderstood.
Oh, distorted.
Sadhguruji, people do a lot of things for their spiritual advancement, such as daily pujas, ceremonies, yagnas, mantras, and so on. And yet, it seems to me that people are not always clear as to why they're doing these things. Is it necessary to do all these things? Why should people do it?
There are various ways to make things happen. If you want roses to bloom in the garden, you ensure enough sunlight is falling, you make sure it's watered, you make sure it's manured, you make sure the surrounding atmosphere is taken care of, there are no English cows eating up the rose bush. There are so many things you need to take care of. Because India as a culture has been a culture which has been single-mindedly focused upon liberation. Today, it might have sank into the background, otherwise in the past, this is a culture where people were not concerned about anything else except their ultimate liberation. Everything else was seen only as a means to that. You become a sannyasi or a monk because you want to get liberated. You get married because you want to get liberated. You do a profession because you want to be liberated. Whatever you do was only towards your mukti or ultimate liberation. When the social order was structured like this, every device the society developed as to how to do, they built it into the day-to-day living as to how to slowly evolve yourself into that possibility, so that nobody will miss it. It is not just somebody who is actively pursuing spiritual process should get there. Every human being, irrespective of what's the nature of their life, everybody should get there. With this context, they created a whole range, a culture which is not just happen accidentally, a culture which is a manifestation of a certain science and a certain understanding as to how a human being will evolve and liberate himself. Based on this, everything was specified, how to sit, how to stand, how to eat, how to cook, every little thing that you do, everything should lead to a higher dimension. With this intention, a culture was crafted very carefully. What you're seeing today is a remnant of that, shreds of that. So, without the necessary continuity, you're seeing it in bits and pieces. So, it may not make much sense because you are not able to see the continuity of it. Or even if there is continuity, people may not be conversant as to why they're doing. They're just doing it because their parents did that and their grandparents did that. Does it work? It doesn't matter whether you know what is happening or not. If you do the right thing, it works. That's the beauty of this creation. You need not understand everything. You do not understand. Do you know the food that you eat and how it is digested in your stomach? You do not know. There are a million processes that are happening there. You do not understand all that. But as long as you eat, you digest. As long as you keep yourself fit, you digest. You don't have to understand how it's happening. Still it is happening to you. So, it is the same with the spiritual process also. You don't have to necessarily understand. As long as you're doing it the right way, it can still work.
Seems to me that our mind plays havoc with us. How do we need to envisage or understand the existence of gods and goddesses? Are they entities? Are they beings? Are they symbols? Are they energies, manifestations? Are they forms of our consciousness?
In India, we have 33 million gods and goddesses.
Yes.
But that happened when our population was 33 million. The purpose of this is, we allowed this freedom. This is the only culture which has allowed this freedom, that you can choose your own god. It's called Ishtadevata, a god of your choice. There's a whole range of them. If you don't like any of them, you can create your own. If you go and worship the tree in your garden, nobody thinks it's odd. If you worship a stone in your garden, nobody thinks it's odd, because you are given the freedom to create your own god. This is the only culture which is a truly godless culture, because here we understood that God is man's making. And not only man's making, we understood the technology of God making. We understood the technology of manifesting different forms of energy to benefit a human being. So if you lack love, you go to Krishna. If you're fearful, you go to Shiva. If you lack prosperity, you go to Lakshmi. Like this, a million possibilities were created. and each of them not just believed but empowered. A certain kind of energy form means it'll assist you in this way. So like this we went about creating various forms, we're still continuing to create new forms. So these are energy forms. These are not just for emotional worship, these are energy forms that you can relate to. All energy forms were given a access code. If you know the access code, the right kind of mantra, you access that particular energy for that dimension of your life to benefit in a particular way. So this is a whole technology by itself, technology of God-making.
So they are energy forms, and they're of course a part of our consciousness.
Consciousness is a very vague word, it doesn't say anything as such. I know it's a very freely used word in this part of the world. So the English word consciousness, we normally call it as prajna. So prajna is a specific aspect. Consciousness is too general, it doesn't really say anything specific. Is it a part of our consciousness? It is a part of creation, definitely. Can anything not be a part of it?
Sadhguruji, actually, what question should I ask?
You already asked a question. You already asked a question, what question shall I ask? See, it's become a way of life today. Questioning is good only to a certain point of time. It starts an inquiry, it nurtures your inquisitiveness. But you can only ask of questions that you're aware of. If you do not know how to do something, or if you do not know the nature of something, you can ask. But you cannot ask about that you do not know at all. So, question asking is relevant only to a certain point. Beyond that, it takes a different dimension of receptivity and perception for one to really continue to grow and perceive higher and higher dimensions of life. So question asking is not always relevant, it's only relevant to a certain point. You ask a question, and if you get an answer which satisfies you, you relax a little bit. You ask another question, if you get an answer that satisfies you, you relax a little more. So I go on answering your questions so that you relax and you become open to the possibility.
Why should we meditate?
Why should you? You should not meditate because you cannot meditate. Meditation is not an act that you can perform. It's a certain quality, it's a certain fragrance. If you cultivate your body, if you cultivate your mind, your emotions and your energy to a certain level of maturity, meditation will blossom. It's like growing flowers in your garden. You can't pull out a flower from a plant. If you cultivate the soil, manure it, water it, take care of it, flowers will blossom. Meditation is just a consequence of a certain level of maturity on these four dimensions of life. If one tries to meditate, they will naturally come to the conclusion it's the most difficult thing to do. But I want to tell them it's not the most difficult thing to do, it's the impossible thing to do, because there is no such thing. Meditation as an act does not exist. You do certain things to set an atmosphere so that meditation blossoms within you. You cannot create a blossoming forcefully. If you allow it, if you have the right kind of ambience and if you allow it, it will happen. So why should one meditate? I think nobody should even think of meditation. One should think of how to take this physical body, this mind, this emotion and these energies to a more, like a more unlimited way of doing things. Right now, everything is in a compulsive mode. From a compulsive mode, if you come to a more conscious mode, in your body, in your mind, in your emotion and in your energies, if all these things travel or transit from a compulsiveness to a more conscious way of existence, meditation becomes a natural happening. It's not something that one should try to do.
Tell us about your inner engineering program.
Too much engineering we have done. It's definitely brought comfort and convenience, but it's not brought us well-being. Because well-being always comes from within. How you are within yourself is your well-being, not what you wear, what kind of house you sit in, what kind of car you drive. This amounts to comfort and convenience, which is needed. So as a generation of people, we have arrived at an enormous sense of comfort and convenience like never before. But we have not arrived at well-being. So now what needs to be engineered is your interiority. So inner engineering is a technology of engineering your interiority. It is a 30 to 32 hour focused effort to see that you engineer your interiority the way you want yourself to be. So if you are given a choice to engineer yourself the way you want yourself to be, would you make yourself blissful or miserable?
I would definitely choose blissful.
What you want for your neighbors may be debatable, but what you want for yourself is definitely pleasantness, isn't it? And if you make yourself very pleasant within yourself, there is substantial medical and scientific evidence today that when you are in a state of pleasantness, your body, your mind, your intelligence, everything works at its best. So a human being can function at his best only when there's utter pleasantness within himself. So engineering a person to a state of ecstasy. Today I can proudly say there are millions of people around the world. If they just close their eyes, tears of ecstasy flow out of their eyes. There are millions of them today. So that's what inner engineering is about.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope you got value from that conversation. That really was an extraordinary conversation to have with somebody who knows what he's really talking about. Thank you for joining.